We now make the transition from epistemology, the study of knowledge, to metaphysics. As you might recall from the ancient days of the start of the class, metaphysics is the study of the nature and structure of reality. And a sub-branch of this is ontology, coming from the Greek ontos, which means thing, which I of course translate as stuff, and ology, the study or science of. So ontology is the study of the constituents of reality, what makes up the world. And these constituents are not like particular things, like, rocks and roast beef sandwiches, kiwis, both the bird and the fruit. It's ontological, kinds, metaphysical types. Things like space, time, souls, minds. There are many questions in metaphysics, some of which we looked at in Part 2, Philosophy and Religion. And these include questions like, what is the nature of God? And does that God exist? They're also kind of like sciencey-like questions, like what is space? What is time? Is time travel possible? What is the basis for chance, for possibility? Are there other realities? And then there are more sort of, clearly metaphysical things like what is it to be a person? Not legally what it is to be a person, but metaphysically. And the question about, do minds exist? So what are some of the classic metaphysical problems? Well, we'll look at, a few of them, not all. If you wish to see more metaphysics, there's a class, Metaphysics, which covers, as you might imagine, metaphysics. One of the classic problems of metaphysics, and a very old one, is the problem of universals. This involves determining what it is for two tokens to be of the same type. And philosophically speaking, a token would be an individual, an instance. So part of this would be the question of what is it for two people to be people? The second part of the problem is determining what individuates entities, what makes one thing, one thing. So if you're talking about two people, what is it that makes them two and not one? The third problem, under the problem of universals, involves determining what makes a thing what it is. So what would it be for a person to be a person? Or what would it be for justice to be just? And so there's three general, problems under the problem of universals, which is, what is it to be under a type? Like, what is it to be justice? For two things to be instances of justice. Or what is it for two things to be beautiful? The next thing is what individuates things. What makes two people? What makes two beautiful things two things? And thirdly, again, what makes a thing what it is? What makes something beautiful? What makes something just? And as you might gather, there's a lot going on, especially in the third one, because you have to look at questions about, what is justice? What is beauty? And Plato did a lot of that. Second sort of big problem is the nature of mind. This involves sorting out, do minds exist? Are they physical or non-physical? Material stuff or ghosty stuff. Are they substances or collections of properties or something else? And one very practical problem here is this, and one we'll all face. Whatever the mind is, can it survive the death of the body? Or is this all we get? You die, you're done. Or can we keep on going somehow? And we'll see more of this in the course of the course. The third problem is the problem of personal identity, which is determining what it is to be a person. So kind of the first sub-problem is trying to answer the question, what is a person? And not in the legal sense, because the legal sense is whatever the law says, which may have nothing to do with the metaphysical sense of being a person or the moral sense of being a person. Now, kind of rationally, you'd want to figure out metaphysically what it is to be a person. That would help answer the question morally what it is to be a person, and then that could provide guidance for legally what should a person be? But those are three separate concerns. Now, once you've sorted out what it is to be a person, then there's the question of what is it to be the same person across time? So we generally don't really worry about that too much, because it's not like you wake up in the morning and say, gosh, I wonder if I'm me, because the answer is always yes, I'm always me. But as we'll see when we talk about our good dead friend John Locke and others, there are some important questions about what it is to be the same person, in cases where we might wonder, is that really the same person? And of course, as you might imagine, death comes into play here as well, because depending on what a person is, that helps determine whether or not, in fact decides, whether or not we can keep going. Because, as Hume noted, what we want in terms of survival is not just something associated with us keeps going, because science tells us that the matter that makes us up just keeps on going forever. But I would not think of myself as surviving if some of the molecules in my body, 1,000 years from now, make up a particularly vicious squirrel. I wouldn't say, gosh, I'm living on in that savage squirrel. It'd just be, wow, what a weird thing. Those molecules that were once part of, Dr. Lavoisier are now part of this incredibly savage squirrel. And so personal identity really matters for death. Next, we'll move on to look at some concepts in metaphysics.